I'll read a few pages from the journal about Rouen. I had been here before one time, for a week in the hospital. It was food poisoning from the transatlantic liner, not a French one. And I liked it. I still do. It's raining, so it reminds me of Holy Hand. And it always seems both real and unreal. Real because it's rainy, full of traffic, and no one I've ever heard of very much loves it. Unreal, because there's always a kind of beauty stirring in it, too. Wherever one looks, one sees a little. That shouldn't be unreal. But there's something unearthly about it, too. People's eyes carry most of it, but the atmosphere holds it, too. A deep and gentle look, an innocence that isn't at all naive, an outgoing quality that isn't aggressive, a delicacy, perhaps just of tone, but nothing one could call fragile. Some humor, too. But that seems fairly low-key. Outside a corner cafe, where a few old girls are always to be seen, seated or standing in lounging pajamas. A 17th century street sign proclaims that this is the Rue des Bons Enfants. Two pages later. There were no bums in Zurich. I can't remember one. But I've already seen a fair number in Rouen. French winos, and I suppose the few I've seen in this clean for tourists quarter are only the tip of the iceberg. They are all, or almost all, still on their feet, cheeks and eyes red and puffy. A French wine red, not a sterno pallor. Their clothes, as ever, are army surplus, worn and baggy, shambling shoes, somber sandals, a patina of street crime covers the ensemble. Fumes of alcohol from within, of exhaust from without, permeate the texture. Caps, inevitably out of season, are worn sometimes at rakish, sometimes at belligerently sober angles. There is a uniformity about the wino look. Diversity, but slight, within it. But as a community, it seems to be thriving, or at least to be getting along. One ripples through a bag of rubbish. Another carries cardboard cartons folded under his arm. There is a tall one in army fatigues. He carries a loaf of fresh bread. Two, Mutt and Jeff, in nearby Elbeuf, went shopping together, choosing the ingredients of a salad. A town that has no bums at all looks artificial. Something important is missing from its life. Rouen has plenty. For a town in the provinces, it seems to have a little of everything. It's not Marseille. It is not afloat on the abyss. It is probably a town of decent people, but not as decent as the burghers of Zurich. Rainy weather, rainy gray weather continues, a constant background for the town. The Seine runs through it, and the sea is not far away. Bells of the cathedral ring through the day. They may have been made at Villedieu, finely tempered. The gentle sound permeates the mist. Their message is not insistent. It is constant, faithful, but does not even slightly obtrude. A French hotel bedroom is as formal as the Zen tea ritual. Bed and bolster, basin and bidet, a wooden wardrobe containing an extra blanket for the night, wallpaper of sanguine uniform design, a feeling of being enclosed. Parts of the whole may break down, but are seldom replaced by anything inappropriate. The people who built them understand something quite simple, perhaps, but that most others miss. They take some very important thing granted. The date of that journal was July 13th, 1974. It's written in Rouen. Now I'd like to read some journal from July 23rd, 1985, just this July, in Patmos, about something else. Looking for the one thread that runs through it all isn't just a matter of sorting through words and finding the one word that might be a name for it. Finding a name for it, or giving it a name, might make us think we had found the thing itself. We'd be so pleased about having found a name that we'd forget the thing itself. But the thing itself, the thread itself, would have gotten away from us. It would continue to elude us. What is the single thread that runs through the whole? What is the nature of it? Why does it run through the whole? What if we start with our own experience? Is there one thread that runs through our whole experience? Consciousness and the memory of conscious moments. Is that the thread that runs through our whole experience? Is that the best way to talk about it? Just talking that way, say anything, what we really look for when thinking of a thread that runs through the whole of our conscious experience is something that feels like a tone. A prevailing note. But what would that tone be? What would that note be? The prevailing tone, the prevailing note would be the tone or note the quiet observer. We aren't always quiet, but the watcher who lives within us most often is, or always is, the watcher who watches all things from within us, watches them quietly, watches them calmly, remembers them, often in significant detail. A watcher who may not always speak, but who clearly remembers. Are the memories of the watcher the thread that runs through the whole of our experience? They are one of the threads, one strand of the thread that runs through the whole of our experience. And even the word memory is only a name that we give that doesn't begin to define or describe that strand of the thread we're in search of. One thread of intelligibility that runs through the whole. One thread we may follow to lead us out of the labyrinth whatever you say of the thread, it's a living thread. Whatever you'd say, it's so lively. Gives life to the whole. Sustains its life. Gives meaning. Is a principle of comprehension. Thread of spirit, of life, of love, of compassion. The I Ching speaks of it Cheng Yi calls it principle. Cheng Yi says I Ching is the thing. A long white thread that holds all things together. And leaves them free. So it's Kalingnos, August 6, 79. Living there was like living someplace. It was like living, like being a part of something. He didn't know he'd wanted to be a part of something. Wasn't sure he did. Maybe it depended on how the wind blew. But living there was bound to mean being a part of it. It meant that for all of them, to be was to be a part of something. Not to be a part of something was not to exist. Not to be a part of something might mean to be a whole. But any whole you could imagine would be a part of something else. One could only be a whole by being a willing part. Could only be whole by willing to be a part, accepting to be a part. A whole person was one who had accepted to become a part of his whole universe. In accepting to be a part, he had become part of the whole and was identified with the whole. As he who accepts a part in a play becomes a part of the play and is one with the play. And if there is glory for the whole, there is glory for each. Who plays his part in the whole. They saw him as a part of the town. He saw them as considering him for a role. The easiest role, the passing stranger. All could greet him. All could entrust him with their confidences. And he had remained a kind of passing stranger. Even the gypsies were greeted on this island. Even the gypsies were spoken to in confidence. And he had made friends with the gypsies. He had identified himself with them. Was he a gypsy? No. He was not a gypsy. Were gypsies gypsies? Even the gypsies were only a part of the whole. A gypsy-like part. The beggars were taken in and fed. He felt he was one with the beggars. The peddlers were questioned about their wares. He was one with the peddlers. Missionaries, wide-eyed, came to the island, and he was one with them. He had no business being there. How then could he find a role? How could he know he had no right to be there? Who had told him? Who could tell? How could he tell himself? Who in all the universe knows where he belongs? Or does not belong? Only he who knows, and who knows full well, and who is that he who knows. Where one is loved, one is needed. Where one is needed, one belongs. Where one is loved, one is needed. Where one is needed, one belongs. Who in all the universe ever knows when he is loved? Who in all the universe ever knows when he is needed? I did not know she loved me, but I knew she needed me then. August 7th, 79. Would let them know that he was himself, that he would take orders from no one. Would let them know he was willing to oblige, that he had his own schedule through the day, would wake when he pleased, would sleep when he was ready, would wear what he liked, would walk where his fancy took him. Encouraged them, whenever he could, to do the same. They lived together in groups. The groups seldom spoke with each other. He moved among them. He moved from group to group, and all spoke with him. You may not know them all, said one of the men, but all of them know you. So many years in this place, they had said. It seemed to him but a moment. He was here. His he-ness, his here-ness were his identity. Moment by moment, unfold, and could be seen in flower. Moment by moment, unfold, could be in its full flowering, comprehended. His moments, their moments, the moments of the town. His moments, their moments, the moments of the town. Time was not the substance of the moment. Time was the medium in which events unfolded. Attention was the substance of the moment. Attention and the objects of attention. Objects of attention were not objects. All objects of attention were events. A moment was the engagement of attention and event. What was she staring at? She was staring at her thoughts. was she staring at? She was staring at a pencil. Staring at a pencil. She stabilized her thoughts. Most of the island was under the sea. Only the tip, only the top was above it. He had no life but his life on the island. He had no life but the life of which he wrote. He wrote of the island and pulled its life together. He wrote of the island and pulled all lives into one. Wrote of the island and pulled its lives together. Wrote of the island and pulled its lives how could each contain the whole? And what the whole that each contained? How could each contain the whole? What whole did each contain? His mind was his mind. Their minds were their minds. Their minds were his minds. His mind was their mind. Rocks on the mountainside, rocks beneath the sea, rocks on the mountainside, rocks beneath the sea. The mountain's head was in the air. Its body in the sea. The mountain's head was in the air. Its body in the sea. The mountain flowered in the air. The island flowered in the sea. The voices of the island the voices of the sea. August 8th, 79. An island of workers. If you work, you belong to the island. An island of hearty livers. If you live, you belong. An island of the wise. The wise belong. Work from early in the morning, till the last light of day. Eat in the shade of a tree, of a boat, of a shed, at noon. Work, scrape, plane, hammer, paint, all through the day. All work like shipyard workers, and all work all through the day. The plants work, the sea works, the hills work, the tree works, they loved the island. It gave them room to work, and work in freedom. Each man worked for himself, or would soon find a way. Each man worked for his family. Each man worked for his own. Chose the wood he wanted of what he could get. Chose the colors he wanted from those he could find. Wore the hat that pleased him. The shirt or no shirt that he liked. no one's slave, no one's dog. A man, beneath the sky, beneath the sun, worked to bring his kaiki, his old, worn-out kaiki, to perfect condition. An hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to scrape a little stretch of woodwork. He wasn't doing it for the state. He wasn't doing it for a duke. He did, and would always be doing it for himself. For himself. For his own. For the only life, the only work he knew. If you worked, you were part of the island. If you worked, you shared in its rhythm. If you worked, the others working could understand you. Work was a good religion for the worker. But not if his work was being exploited by those who did not work. Not work, but exploitation leads the work to revolt. A lifetime of work, an eternity of rest. Work now, rest in eternity. Work for work's sake. Work for life's sake. Don't work because work is a virtue. But know that work is a virtue because it contributes to life. Is all work action? Is all action work? Is action contemplation? Is contemplation work?
What is this man's work? What is that man's work? How does this man? How does that man? Does this work well? Does that work well? We have no place on our island for a man who will not work. Does he work? Does he work? Like a free man? Does he work? Does he work? Like a slave? Does he work? Does he work? Like a well man? Does he work? Does he work? Like the ill? If he's worked through the day, he's done all he can. If he's worked through the day, he deserves to rest. If he's worked through the day and has worked all his days, he deserves to rest. And reading notes from June 19th, 1985, in Patmos. Start to one called Beach Games. 10 girls, 4 boys, or 9 girls, 5 boys. Girls sit in groups of 2 or 3. Boys stand behind them, near the rocks. Boys standing a little closer than at arm's length from each other. Join hands at shoulder height, as though they would dance in a circle, or dance in a line, or with joined hands, advancing, 4 abreast, leap lightly over the seated girls, and hands, still joined, run into the sea. Instead, they stood a few moments, as they were, hands joined, as they joked with each other and the girls, then dropped their arms and regrouped about the rocks. Alexis, in dark boat, rowing offshore, unbuttoned his shirt and took it off, stood poised just a moment on the bow of his boat and dove into the sea, scrambled up again over the side of the boat, and stood up for another dive. As though on cue, they rowed for home. Alexis, in his small, old, wooden boat, Yanni and 2 boys, in his new, white, plastic boat. The girls walked home together down the road. The boys
shouting to it, sometimes, from the sea. A way of doing, a way of seeing, a way of seeing, a way of doing. Painting teaches us to see. Dancing teaches us to do. Music carries us through the day. Unheard music, night and day. Wind, says old Anton. The weather's turned around. Wind, says young Unite. Bum weather. Sit down, says Benedictus, at a table, drinking beer. Can't do it, I said. Sit down, he says, and I do. "600 photos of the lion tamer, taken at different times in his life. In every one, he was perfectly poised. In every one, he was dancing. The tightrope walker had seen others fall, so he spent his first 5 years learning how to. He practiced every way he knew of falling and of catching himself on the wire as he did. Not having eyelids or a movable globe, fish seem to stare meaninglessly, but they don't. A bear tamer says bears are dangerous because you never can read their facial expressions. You think the whole world is practicing up for a show, a dance, a pageant, a circus. Never weary, never weary. This is some journal from July 24th. A hubbub of voices. One he recognizes as his own. Saying the things he'd say, things he'd want to. Imposing his own kind of quiet order on the sea of voices about him. He's walking forward slowly, as if he were an armored diver
walking at the bottom of the sea, moving slowly. If he speaks slowly. Words swim toward it. He chooses this, and gently turns away another. He feels at home with the word he chose, and with its calming effect on the other voices. She said she had a dream last night and felt as though she were still dreaming, as though she were still in the world of her dream and were only half awakened into this one. The one she thought she was in now, and talking to him. But he, too, had only partly awakened and was still in the world of his dream. Ambrose, Sandra, Sandra, Ambrose. Sandra's clearest reality was her dream. That was why she liked to remember the city. That was why Ambrose liked to remember it, too. City. That city was one in which the very most wakeful moments were largely a dream. A city whose daily existence was like a vibrant echo of last night's dreams. A city of intertwining, interlacing, interpenetrating dreams. It was Sandra's city. It was Ambrose's city. It was the city of all those poor, sleepless, wakeless, foodless, drinkless, nightmare, dreaming, poor, Valley Street, Crevcourt Street, Maran Street, Sabbath Street, dreams, all mingled, and rose like mist in sunlight. I'll read a couple of pages from a journal in Zurich about a dwarf clown with a circus knee. I think he was a greeter or a ticket taker before the show began, and he wore a little business suit and a red Stetson hat. And when I saw him then, it was between shows, or the evening show was just about to begin, or just had begun. He was brave, and he was out to drink coffee or something at the canteen with some other performers. This is where the writing starts. His face was as big as anyone's face. It was only his body that wasn't. His face was at least as mature as anyone's there. His eyes were its most eloquent feature. His nose was snub, his mouth rather formless. His eyes, what color were they? Brown or gray? Bright or dull? Lively or weary? Brown or gray? Weary, but wakeable. Did it make him happy, wearing the clown suit? No, it was the uniform of his trade. Did he avoid people? No, he went toward them. Toward those he did know, or toward those he didn't? Toward those he did. With confidence? Some confidence. He knew he could talk their language, that they could talk his. He knew they'd accept him, at least as a joke, a familiar one, who could be treated with levity, but gently. He knew which ones to go near and which to avoid. He was prepared to talk tough, pretended to think of himself as a man of the world. He got the point of their ribaldry. He pretended to surpass it with his own. But no one said anything very coarse, and neither did he. It was always, almost always, an exchange of pleasantries. Were his eyes old or young? More old than young. More old than you'd expect them to be. He'd look at you and look away, and then he'd look again. They talked to each other. They talked to him. After talking to him, they talked a new way, a modified way, to each other. Before he had come, before he had joined them, they had talked, not having him in mind. Now they had him in mind. They talked a new way, a modified way, to each other. They talked to him. He bounced their words back to them.
Then they returned to their conversations, and he stood, almost alone, looking at nothing, thinking nothing, listening, not listening to the music of the band, music that accompanied the acrobats. Sanctification of certain human qualities and the reevaluation of all human qualities in the light of this sanctification. Naming some of the qualities: love and knowledge, understanding, wisdom and compassion, now some words and episodes. Had looked forward to saying few really cutting things. Gave him a Christian burial just outside the ashram. Had he been sent to argue man's case with X, or X's with men, or to patch up wounds at both ends of the abyss. Holding all worlds together like the petals of a rose. Smothering each other with holy kisses. Bright and wise, wise and bright, sometimes bright and sometimes wise.
being always bright and wise, isn't always bright or wise. Here are 4 lines, none of them very straight, but all labeled appropriately. First is straight line, that's quite straight. Second is crooked line, that's quite crooked. The next, that looks quite crooked, is labeled 1,280 straight lines. And the other, which is a little crooked, is called one slightly crooked line. These are more visual concepts. And here's a page that says Yugoslav train games. Thinking of games leads to Albert Albertson's Book of Games. From knocking grandma downstairs to chess. Here's some more straight lines. One is labeled, they're all quite short. One is labeled far, the other is labeled near. One is labeled not too far. Another, just about like it, is labeled not too near. Here's a cartoon. It's called an Equestrian Monument. Very big man standing next to a very small horse. Idea for that came from looking out of the Yugoslav train window at a man who was standing near a field. Seemed to be quite dressed up. It may have been Sunday. And he was leaning on a cane and standing there really looking like a monument. So much that I thought nobody would stand that way if they hadn't seen monuments, lots of monuments. And picked up the idea from one of them. Now we come to some regular poems. Something that might be a thing about poems I can use for a poster. Somebody, Mr. Ottenhausen, wants a poster, or a couple of posters. So this is one. It's a poem, but maybe the kind that could go on a poster. Anyway, it's one vertical poem on one page. Dream black, dream white, real black, real white. Now there's some more pages with visual poems or conceptual poems. Just saying how to place words in relation to each other. This is vertical, white at the top, black at the bottom. Next is vertical again with black at the top, white at the bottom. Next is white on the left side and black on the right. Next is cross-shaped, white at the top, black at the bottom, white at the left, black at the right. Next just reverses that. Black at the top, white at the bottom, black at the left, white at the right. And then there's another cross with white at the top, white at the bottom, black at the left, black at the right. And reverse of that, black at the top, black at the bottom, white at the left, white at the right. And then trickier one with 6 points. Yes, it's 6. No, it's 8. With 8 points, black at the top, black at the bottom, black at the left, black at the right, and then diagonally in the interstices is white, 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 like rays coming out from the center.
Now I'll read some fables. First, The Man with the Big General Notions. There was a man who said, "Why should I eat cake when all I want is bread? Why should I eat cake and frosting when all I want is bread and candy?" The man was accounted very wise, and he thought it was a true account. So when he went to build a house, he said, "Why get brick when all you want is hardness?" So he got a big rough stone, and on top of the stone he put a bone, and on top of the bone he put a box, and on top of the box he put a bar, and on top of the bar he put a beam, and the pile stood 5 feet high and tottered, and then it fell to the ground. And the man said, "Why should I get cement when all that I need is stickiness?" So on top of the stone he put some snow, and on top of the bone he put some glue, and on top of the box he put some tape, and on top of the bar he put some gum, and on top of the pile he put molasses, and the pile stood 6 feet high. And the man said, "Why should I shingle a roof when all that I want is shelter?" So on top of the pile he put a hat, and next to the hat a big umbrella, and next to that a manhole cover, and next to that a greening tree, and next to that a turtle shell, and the roof was 10 feet wide. And the man said, "Why should I get a wife when all that I want is something alive?" So into the house he put a dog, and next to the dog he put a cat, and next to the cat he put a fish, and next to the fish he put a snail, and next to the snail a big baboon that stood 4 feet high. And why should I buy a window or bulb when all that I want is light? So next to the dog he built a fire, and next to the fire he put a glass, and next to the glass he put a jewel, and next to the jewel, an electric eel, and next to the eel, a forest pool, which was about 12 feet deep. And the man said, "Why should I buy a bed when all that I want is sleep?" So he went to sleep, and the dog went mad and bit the cat, and the cat ate the fish, and the fish ate the snail, and the tree caught fire, and the molasses ran, and the snow melted, and the hat fell down, and the cover fell into the forest pool, and so did the shell, and so did the gum, and so did the tape, so did the bar, so did the beam, so did the box, so did the bone, so did the glue, so did the stone, and the big baboon. Some man, some house. The alley violinist. If you were an alley violinist and they threw you money from 3 windows, and the first note contained a nickel and said, "When you play, we dance and sing. Signed, a very poor family." And the second one contained a dime and said, "I like your playing very much. Signed, a sick old lady." And the last one contained $1 and said, "Beat it." Would you stand there and play? Beat it? Walk away playing your fiddle? An angel. An angel appeared to 3 different men. And he said to the first, "If I gave you a handful of putty, what would you do?" "I would make it into a vase," said the man. "And what would you do?" he asked the second. "I would make it into a bird," said the man. "And what would you do?" he asked the third. "I would make it holler, said the man. And the angel stood a moment, as though he were listening. Now, he said to the first man, because you would make it into a vase, the Lord will fill you with living water. To the second, he said, and because you would make it into a bird, the Lord will bring you to fly through the heavens. And because you would make it holler, he said to the third, look out. He will make you holler. A problem in design. What if you like to draw big flowers? But what if some sage has told you that there is nothing more beautiful, nothing more beautiful, nothing more beautiful than a straight line? What should you draw? Big flowers? Straight lines? I think you should draw big flowers. 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 Until they become a straight line. The angel and the little old lady. An angel appeared to a little old lady and said, would you like a wish? For my granddaughter, said the little old lady, that she grow up to be a beautiful young lady and marry a nice young man. 2 wishes, said the angel. Would you like another? Whatever other good thing you can think of, said the little old lady. The girl grew up to be a beautiful young lady and married a nice young man. After a year or so, a child was born to them. The angel's idea. Now the old lady was quite a bit older. The angel appeared to her again and said, "Would you like a wish?" For the child, she said, that he grow up to be a handsome young man and marry a nice young girl. 2 wishes, said the angel. Would you like another? Whatever other good thing you can think of, said the little old lady. The short man. A short man who lived in a low country once said to himself, if I were to move to the mountains, I might be happier. Or again, if close to the sea, it might be better. As it is, I see nothing but towering windmills. Men who are taller than I, and even children who have grown beyond me. The next day, he moved to the mountains. What a beautiful view, he said, of the tiny houses in that low valley. The goats, no bigger than puppies. The men, little bigger than dogs. He was quite content. The north wind rattled his house, but he stayed inside. An avalanche slid right past it. He took no notice. In spring, he walked out again to watch the flowers breaking open in the valley. I like it in the mountains, he said to himself, and perhaps would like it by the sea. But to be a short man and live in a low country is not, and perhaps would never have been, a satisfactory role for me. 3 men. 3 men found a treasure under a tree. Well, we're a lucky threesome, said the first man. You 2 guys are the lucky ones, said the second. I don't suppose there's anything there for me. Oh no, said the third. We'll divide it 3 ways. They sat down under the tree, and the first man counted out an equal number of pieces of gold for each. Then they shouldered their packs. Well, said the first, I think I'll go north. I may as well go south, said the second. And I'll go east, said the third. And they went on their ways. The first man came to a city and spent all his gold on dancing girls. The third went east and built a great temple. The second, however, went south and was cozened out of his pile by farmers. The lucky 3, said a bird in the tree. Lucky 3, the lucky 3.